Thank you for joining us. Today's webinar will be on Imaginit Clarity 2019, and we're going to show you how you can stop wasting time in Revit. So here's today's agenda. We're going to go through a little bit about RedStack, what challenges you face when you're using Revit and on BIM projects. Let's talk about the time and money, and then we'll go into about Clarity, and then in depth into task automation, metrics, summary, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A. So RedStack's been around for about 20 years. We've got offices locally, Southeast Asia and Germany, and offer a wide range of products and services, which I'll get into. This is me. I'm Damien Jovica. I've been around for 21 years in IT, CAD, scanning. I've been around for 21 years in IT, CAD, scanning, 3D printing. In terms of what we do, we offer professional services, management systems, 2D, 3D software, hardware, IT, and automation systems. In terms of software, if you've used Autodesk software of the portfolio that they have, we also do Fuser and Bluebeam. We offer software for all industries, AEC, manufacturing, and construction. In terms of hardware, scanners, printers, UAVs, and in IT, computer. In terms of management systems, Vault, Clarity, which we'll get into later, Bluebeam for collaboration, project management review tools like Navisworks, BIM 360 for cloud collaboration and management. Fusion 360 Team is the manufacturing version of BIM 360. We connect business systems and as well. So in terms of professional services, we do business process reviews, we do training and mentoring, we deploy systems, we do programming, plugins, Dynamo for automation, contract services, 3D printing as a service, and 3D scanning as a service as well. Printing as a service and 3D scanning as a service as well. In terms of automation systems, Configurator 360, which is a product configurator. Clarity, a CAD connector, which will connect CAD to an ERP system. Inventor's an excellent automation system, so is Dynamo, and Config Linker. We also have a BIM services division. We will do BIM management training, BIM project management, BIM plus IoT, artificial intelligence, facilities management, and also VR. So that was about RedStack. Let's get into Imaginit Clarity 2019. So let's talk about the common challenges that Revit users, BIM managers, and organisations or firms that use Revit currently face. So BIM coordinators or BIM managers and others spend a significant amount of time on design support tasks. Non-Revit users have to request or interrupt people for up-to-date information, and you're producing different kinds of documentation, and this is a time-consuming, cobbled-together process, typically. For many projects, it's hard for you to be in every project every day and know what's happening. So here's a couple more points, and that may sound familiar to you. You're facing distractions from colleagues from all directions, and the chaos is really hard to manage. Especially when projects move and change so quickly, and you never signed up to be a firefighter. They threw you in here in the deep end, and you're tasked with the strategic direction of Revit and BIM, but you rarely ever have time to be strategic. Problems when it's too late. And then there's staff. There's staff that should not be in Revit, but they need to access Revit data. They need to extract files or information from Revit. And they work in projects, but they're too close to the model. But on top of that, though, they're essential to the process. So they sort of need to be, but they don't. And then continuing on with non-Revit users, you've got a project architect or engineer, manager, and they need to print just PDFs or DWIFs or digital data sets. they don't have Revit or a machine that's capable of running Revit, even if they could get access to Revit. So they need to pull someone away and say, help me, I need this information now. Stop what you're doing and do what I need from you. Or the effects of them not having that information. So as a BIM manager, you may just need more than tasks. These are tasks because your firm has dozens of projects running at the same time. You've got a wide range of users with different skill levels in Revit. So because of that, compliance is a major issue. And with so many projects with varying skill sets, it's hard to be compliant or maintain standards. And then compliant or maintain standards. And then project health of a Revit project, monitoring that on a daily basis is unrealistic, let alone every week. So what are the typical solutions that people deploy to combat these challenges? They do it manually. You know, they print deliverables or produce PDFs or other deliverables manually. They look at some of the metrics that you can get from Revit manually, or they hire someone. Maybe they get an intern, a low-level employee, like a junior, to do these time-intensive tasks for them and find that information. But they're not really skilled at everything, and that can be an issue. Plugins. A lot of companies have third-party plugins. One does this, one does that, the other does this. They use Excel to pull out reports or metric data to get insights. And Dynamo, it's an excellent automation tool that can pull information or do task automation. So the impacts of these different processes and tools is that it's time intensive. It's costly because time is money. There's an IT overhead by having so many plugins that do different tasks. There's a disconnect. So many plugins that do different tasks. There's a disconnect. You're doing some things manually, some things semi-automated, other things are automated via a plugin, and nothing is in one spot. And you still need a human and their PC to run that. And then you still got the challenge that non-Revit users still don't have access to that information. So they need to pull someone else away from what they're doing to get them that information that they want. So let's talk about the time and money that gets spent on projects. So I pose a question to you: what do you have on a project? Has anyone ever calculated the time it takes to make PDFs, whether you use a plugin or you do it the old-fashioned way, to export DWGs or IFCs or NWDs or any other file format, or the time it takes or the cost of finding the lost time and money due to poor Revit performance, or the fact that you're just rushing and cutting corners just to make a deadline and you miss things and you know you're missing them, but the deadline's there. You have to make it happen, so things get missed. Or the time lost due to the lack of Revit knowledge. Someone doesn't know how to do something, it gets missed, and there's delays or quality issues with the end product. So where's the value per project? If we look at say a couple of common tasks to create a PDF, we typically spend an hour a week. To export DWGs, we'd say an hour a month. Sending files, let's say 30 minutes a week. And reviewing files for issues, 30 minutes a week, which is never enough time. Let's just look at those 4 tasks and what the costs are per project just in admin to do just those 4 tasks alone. That turns out to be 9 hours a month at $75 an hour. We're talking at about $675 minimum per month just on those 4 tasks. Just in 12 months, that's $8,100. Now, if you've got 5 projects you're running on, that's 40K. Let's double that. And a lot of firms are running on 10 projects at one given time. That's a staggering number, $81,000 just in project administration alone. Even project administration alone. Even if we halve those figures, that's still 40K on 10 projects. It's still an alarming amount of money on time wasted. So in terms of task automation, in Clarity, the average Clarity project saves over 200 hours in task. In Clarity, the average Clarity project saves over 200 hours in task automation alone, let alone all the other benefits of Clarity. 200 hours times $75 is 15K per project. And if you have 10 projects, that's 150K. 150K. So let's talk about what's in Imaginit Clarity. How does it work? What does it do? So the purpose of Clarity is to make the BIM manager's life better by taking care of the repetitive manual task and providing insight into your firm's use. It does automation. It automates files, metadata, reports, models, backups, Dynamo scripts, and it gives you insights. There's over 50 model metrics, there's change tracking, web schedules, and web data sheets, and there's a new feature, the 50+ model metrics, unlimited model metrics, and unlimited automation tasks. If you're looking for something that Clarity can't do, it can now. So how does it work? You've got a Clarity server or a host server in the center. Your models live somewhere, could be a network. Your models live somewhere, could be a network folder, Revit server, BIM 360, project-wise, Vault, could be anything. Though those models talk to Clarity or Clarity talks to those models, and through task servers, it runs tasks, let's say PDF, because task servers, it runs tasks, let's say PDF, because that's something we can all understand, and it outputs it somewhere, whether it's a network folder, Revit server, FTP, or an external source like cloud, BIM 360, project-wise, it doesn't matter. It gets put in, it doesn't matter. It gets put in and it gets pushed out. So in terms of Clarity data, it's one project database with multiple models. You're typically got in a multidisciplinary firm, you've got an architectural model, you've got the interior linked with each other, and tasks can all be run from all multiple models into Clarity, and we can output data, schedules, rooms, model metrics, etc. Anything you really want now. So this is the home screen of Clarity, your project, and your projects live at the bottom. You click on a project and then you enter into that project to see further, to do further things. So this is the tasks tab here, where we're pressed on tasks and metrics. Here are the task tabs at the top where we can see what the current task, what the completed task. In this particular scenario, we're going to set up the PDF task. Once it's set up, it just runs, or you can customize it or run things on demand. And you got task servers, what the timelines, and how long it took to run them, and when they got run and when they completed. So let's dig a little deeper into task automation. So what it does, it repeats the manual processes on a Revit project. So once you've defined how to do that process, I use a machine up or a user to do the work. And now anyone can run that task, not that Revit user who has Revit or knows how to do that particular task. What we want to do with Clarity is liberate BIM information and documents to everyone, not to use that application or let alone that data set. You know, I'm in MEP, I don't want to touch your model, but I need information from that, and you're too busy for me. So this is where Clarity can step in as well and produce views and sheets, data sheets, reports, and insights. So you can run tasks in Revit, you can run it through a web browser, you can run it on demand, by schedule, or it can run on Sync to Central. And that can be done through the setup process. In terms through the setup process. In terms of what kind of tasks can it automate? PDFs, DGNs, DWFs, DWGs, FBX. We can 3D models. We can batch export things. Revit images, data standards, backups, model metrics, exchanging information, sending, receiving, and things like that. If we go even further, if you're using BIM 360, we can upload and replace. We can do backups or downloads. We can trigger a publish to BIM 360. We can track changes. We can take model snapshots, compare models. You know, BIM 360 design has an excellent feature with the traffic light system in the model comparison, but that just only compares elements. Clarity can go, and if you need to produce a viewable in BIM 360 or the Clarity viewer, it can automate that. We can back up tasks, we can do upgrades, family upgrades. We all know how time consuming that can be. We can harvest families, do analysis on families, how complex, what kind of usage are they having? We've got this, what kind of usage are they having? We've got this family's been here, sitting here for 10 years, we never use it, why? And we can run custom Dynamo tasks. We can run them on a singular basis, or we can run 50 Dynamo tasks as a batch, or macro tasks, or if you've leveraged on the API of Revit and have .NET, we can run API tasks as well with Clarity. So here's where we can select a task on the bottom. Just give me a second. Here we've got what kind of task we have, and here we can select what task we want to run. In terms of Dynamo, as I said, batch tasks. Here we've got the Dynamo task, and we've got it scheduled here to run every day at 2 a.m. Got it scheduled here to run every day at 2 a.m. So for non-Revit users, they can access Clarity via a web browser through a smartphone, their computer. They can run tasks on demand, get email notifications when that task was completed. They can print to paper, or they can see where the latest PDFs are and access them. So let's get onto metrics, which is quite important for BIM managers. They need to know what's happening in the Revit model, why it's happening as well. So Clarity can track over 50 different model metrics in your import elements, file open times, sync to central times, number of 3D views. I think we've all been there, and the Revit model is slow and you don't know why. So what you can set up in Clarity is compliance, setting up company standards. A screen grab here, we've got, you know, a typical model size between 150 and 650. If it gets over 650, it's going to highlight it. You know, here we've got file size, number of warnings, number of sheets, number of imports, and we can set some standards in a traffic light system. And at any given time, or any given day, we can see how our system. And at any given time, or any given day, we can see how our projects are performing. So here's the metrics summary, which is new in 2019. So before you had to go into the project to see what the metrics were. Now I can go to the metrics head. You know, these are yellow. These are areas for concern, where these for here are okay. So we can dig a little deeper into the hospital project and see, you know, there's 107 views, not on a sheet. We've got 2,424 warnings when we should have things, when we should have 0, but, you know, 0 to 100 can you know, he seems to be acceptable, but this is a cause for concern. Let's go into it straight away and see what's going wrong. And this may not even be your own projects. You might receive MEP, you're an architect, and you receive MEP and structural projects from from another stakeholder, and their models aren't up to standard or don't comply, and it's going to cause issues with the project or linking into your project. And you can run that in Clarity and say, hey, hang on a second, you got to fix these issues. It's going to corrupt a data central's times and things of that nature. And to have that information in an instant is invaluable. So we can go one step further and look at the. So we can go one step further and look at the summary of that and see on a project basis, or we can go by models and see what the metrics are of that model. In the metric configuration, we can assign 0 to 100 warnings is okay, but if it gets over 400, this is too high. We need to address this now before it gets out of hand and gets into the thousands and causes problems. So here's and we can see in the last 7 days what the file sizes are. We can see it over time as well. Here's model size versus 3D views. So we understand the bigger the model, the more the 3D views, but we can also see areas where there may be a cause for concern, and we move a little bit further and see why something is what it is. So views on sheets is another particular metric that's quite popular amongst Clarity users. And here's another one where I can get all models here and see what the model metrics are, what the model metrics are in a traffic light system. In this particular case, we've got the hospital model, and because of our company standards, we can see there's some red and yellow, and we want to look into those and see why that is and rectify. And we want to look into those and see why that is and rectify it before it becomes a problem. Here's some charts where we've got model size. We can see a history or a timeline, how the model size has changed. Open times. You can see now it's in the seconds. You're going to know that it's going to happen, and you can look into why, and then go into further metrics and see, okay, well, look at this in-place family. This is what's caused it, or we've linked in a particular project with too many warnings, and that's affected our sync to central times, or open times, I should say in this graph. So we can collate data and dashboard it as well. So we can have multiple graphs, multiple dashboards across projects or in a particular project, and see what's happening with our data. Here's some further analytics where we've got file sizes across all projects. Analytics, where we've got before and after, and where the file sizes have changed over time as well. So going into model metric for Clarity, which is an exciting innovation or improvement in Clarity. So what you can do is automate tasks now in Dynamo and bring them into Clarity. There's a Clarity node in automate tasks and produce metrics. So this in this example, we have an MEP client who wanted to know what equipment was not assigned to a system. And through Dynamo, you could do that. However, with the Clarity node, we can now assign that value. To a metric, where now we can click in our metrics report, how many unconnected numbers of unconnected equipment do we have, and we can report on that and show that. So really any value that you want out of Revit can be extracted via Dynamo, and then we can either automate a task or produce a metric in Clarity through the Dynamo node for Clarity. Here's another example where we're using Dynamo. So Revit users, they're too busy now to go anywhere else. They're engrossed in their Revit model. Start page comes up and we can pull some metrics straight on the start page in a way without having to go anywhere else. So we can tell them information at the start page. When you could manually run the Dynamo player, or we could run it through Clarity host server on an automated or scheduled level. We can produce room data sheets, we can do change tracking, web schedules, and this is bi-directional. We're not just pushing data out of Revit, we can change that data and push it back into Revit as well. So what it does is it answers the questions, what has changed in this model since the last version I received, and it shows you graphically element moves, parameter changes, elements, and what's been deleted, what's new. And then all that can be handled automatically. You can get email notifications of important changes that happen in the model. So like I said, with web-based schedules, like rooms, doors, and there's about 220 other options for web-based schedules that can be produced. They can include diagrams, level by level rooms, equipment locations. It can be color coded as well. 20 categories. It can connect to external databases like Archibus or FM system, and it's fully customizable. Some of these things you're probably doing or you're not doing because it takes too much time. I don't have the time, and if I could produce this type of data, it would make not only my life easier, but it may add value. It would make not only my life easier, but it may add value to the project or win us projects because we can provide this data to our clients now as well, and they can be at the forefront of the design or the construction or the facilities management of the project. So here's just some data sheets. I'm just going to go through some screen grabs of different data sheets that just free up that information and pulls that metadata out and graphically shows what that metadata is telling us. And the data sheets can be configured. There's security, there's controls in there, so you can be an admin, web editor, project coordinator, things like that. And if you've got the permission, go ahead. You know, it'll log it all, and you can do approvals and rejections. So a Revit user can review and accept changes that happen with this bi-directional workflow with Clarity. So here's the example of the Revit plugin for Clarity, the Clarity plugin for Revit, where the user those, not accept those, and you can now start the life cycle workflow of that change. And you know, the information goes into that schedule or data sheet. So let's go into analytics. What do we mean by analytics? It's the process of better decision. It's data about the design and how people are using it. So here's a type of analytics that collected: the Auditor's Performance Advisor criteria, Revit warnings, and model metrics and content metrics. So there's the 19 Performance Advisor criteria: duplicate instances, large family files, unused nested families, in-place families, disjoint solids, room separation, a lot of things that pose the question, why is my Revit model slow? To manually go through every one point by point is a tedious, time-consuming process, and people either spend the time or just let it go until something goes wrong. And going more into the analytics, you know, numbers, number of links, CAD links, hosted families, groups, it just keeps on going on and on. And like I said, with the Dynamo node for Clarity, it could be any metric that you wanted, and we could report on it now. In Clarity, you may want to do more with it. So Clarity harvests those analytics and stores it in an SQL Server database, and then that can be accessed by business intelligence tools as well. It can also be mixed with other data you have about projects as well. So it's not just this project, it could be many projects at this given time. So I'm just going to summarize the task automation and metric side of things of Clarity. You can automate tasks and get insights that would normally take hours or not at all because you just don't have the time to do them. If you're automating now, you can bill that time. It's billable time that is running automatically. And now that has a twofold effect. Now that I'm automating and I'm getting paid to automate, also my high-paid designer that was getting paid to do this manual task can now focus on design. So it's a two-edged sword there. We're liberating Revit information to all users. Anyone can get access to the information. No one's getting pulled away to provide information for someone else. We can automate any Clarity task with Dynamo. We can get any metric with the Clarity node for Dynamo, and we can connect Clarity to external systems. So that's it for the Clarity webinar. I'm going to open it up to some Q&A. Yeah, Chris, you're right. Stop wasting time. Is that? I'm assuming that was from the shared screen. Good one. Clarity is cloud-based, as all our operations are cloud-based, and we don't have any servers. What's the cost of the solution? No, it's not cloud-based, and it needs to run on a server. And if you're hosting your servers in a data center, that's what I'd recommend. You could host Clarity in the cloud. For instance, Imaginit, they put a sample project or a project for one of their clients in their Clarity server. It was cloud-based, and we can connect to it down here in Melbourne. So yeah, cost of the solution. There's definitely licensing model there with Clarity, perpetual and subscription security, and own a ODP, own a data portal. I'll send that to you, Marcel, anyone who's interested. Scalable, definitely. We can have multiple host servers, multiple task servers to do that globally. You can have, let's say Melbourne, let's go nationally now. We've got a host server running in Melbourne, and we've got a task server in Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane, and those task servers run the project, and the host server can, say, live in Melbourne. Or we can have and multiple countries have their own task servers, or one task server serving multiple countries. In terms of its own server, or can it be run on Revit server? Both. Marcel, yeah, it's however you want to run it. How are C4R projects being automated where there is not an API to open these files, i.e. batch to print? I'd have to refer that, Chris. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I know there was changes with C4R to BIM 360 design. I do know you can choose both. Yeah, I've got Max here.
Hi, Chris. It's Max here from RedStack. As far as the C4R connection, what Clarity can do is pull it locally into the Clarity server, generate the outputs, so run the tasks, and then it can also push the information back onto the C4R projects. So that's essentially how we can connect to extract the Revit model, perform tasks, and then put it back in. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
And just early on too, for Marcel's question, how Clarity can manage three types of projects. So you can have a file-based, Revit server-based, or it can, as I mentioned earlier, it can connect to C4R projects. So it can process all of those, all the available projects.
So Chris Winkles has asked, Clarity automates tasks. So is this always processed by server on a user's PC? And this would be on a server.
So the task server can be a server or a client workstation. With the server, there's obvious requirements. So it's probably preferred on a workstation, because on a workstation you can get much better graphics card requirements. But it's a dedicated machine purely for processing those tasks.
I mean, theoretically, you could nominate a client machine as the task server, but then while those tasks are running, nominate a client machine as the task server, but then while those tasks are running, and if that user is now using Revit, there's going to be a challenge there. You might want to say after 5 p.m., this machine's a task server, and schedule all the tasks to run
Correct.
at 5 p.m. onwards. If you had a dedicated task server, we recommend
do that.
Onwards. If you had a dedicated task server, we recommend it be a CAD workstation. As Max said, you need a graphics card because it's pulling a license of Revit, running the task, and then relinquishing the Revit software if it was a multi-user.
Yep. So it essentially opens Revit every time it asks and then closes it.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can have it on a client machine, but if on demand, that's going to cause a challenge. But if it's scheduled on a client machine, it's fine. All right, we'll wait a few more minutes if there's any more questions. What I'll do, I'll send an email out to all users. Next steps, if you want to catch up, we can do a teleconference, another web demo, a live demo. If you want to give us your models, where we can put it in Clarity and see how it performs, or on-site demonstration, more than happy to do so. You're welcome, Marcel. Thank you for attending. No worries, Russell. Do you know if there's any plans for a cloud-based version? Not at
this stage. Another option that could be viable as far as the cloud is to actually use a cloud server like an Amazon or one cloud server like an Amazon or one of those services that allow you to set up a server on the cloud, and you could set up Clarity on there, and that way it's accessible from anywhere.
I think the challenge is now with Imaginit could develop their own infrastructure. I think in a perfect world, it would be using the Forge platform to run in the cloud, where your Revit models are locally, you go BIM 360 and then run those tasks somehow. It may be a bridge too far at this point. I don't know.
We're not aware of any plans at this stage, but I guess the closest is to have a cloud server and then install it on there.
Yeah. Thanks, John. All right, we'll wait a couple more minutes, and if there's any more questions. How is parameter change within an element? Does this happen during a scheduled task or as an element is modified? So what he's asking is it watching the element, and let's say the element changes, then the task gets generated? I wouldn't think so.
Is this in reference to getting those notifications inside of Revit about the changes?
Yeah, the change tracking.
Yeah,
of the
no,
elements.
that's not happening through a task. It's purely someone making a change and then submitting that,
No, that's a change request, but you know how they'll go and compare, like how the elements changed.
The compare function.
Yeah.
It uses, I believe, a metamorphosis add-on.
Yeah.
To run.
Yeah.
It does give you. It's similar to the BIM 360 compare.
Yeah, but what he's saying, but as soon as it changes, do they get notified? Hey, this has changed, or
I'm not sure. I would have to check.
Yeah, we'll check that. I mean that's Chris. Yeah, I mean that's Chris. Yeah. So I suppose if it wasn't possible, the workaround would be to run the task every hour. And produce those metrics and those notifications if there was a change.
We might have to come back, Chris, with that on that question.
No problems, Chris. You're welcome, Chris. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Hope you have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Hope you have a great weekend. If you've got any questions, you can email us. Contact details. We'll put it up on the screen in a second. So you can contact me on my mobile, 0400 732 928, or email djobither@redstack.com.au, and be more than happy to help out. All right, Lewis. Yep, will do.